Well, hello, I'm Janet Morena, Executive Director of Priests for Life. Welcome to our program. Well, as you know, with the overruling or overturning, whatever phrase you like, of Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey, the subject of abortion is in the news. Constantly, people are talking about it. And there's a lot of misunderstanding that goes on out there about the abortion issue right now. Of course, Planned Parenthood and the far left, they're crying and complaining, oh, these women, they're not going to have enough abortions. And of course, we know in so many states, abortion is still legal till birth, brothers and sisters. And that's why, we have to really pay attention to what's going on in our state. We have to pay attention to the upcoming elections. Very important. We've got to put pro-life people in office from the local level all the way up to Congress, because now with this decision, it has gone back from the judicial branch of the government to legislative. So we all have to get involved. And what we have to do, brothers and sisters, is understand this issue even more. What happens to a woman who suddenly finds herself pregnant and she says, uh-oh, I don't know what I want to do? Well, joining me today is someone we're going to chat about that whole process, that thinking process of how you get from maybe avoiding an abortion, thinking you might have an abortion, but you're not going to have an abortion, to making an adoption plan and what that's about. Many women, when they're surveyed, unfortunately, they'll say they'd rather choose abortion than adoption because they're afraid of that whole process. Oh, I'm giving away my child. Why is killing your child easier than giving away your child? We're going to explore all those things today on our program. And I'd like to welcome to my program McKayla Williams. McKayla, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Well, you, young lady, had such an experience, right?
Yes.
You found yourself in an unexpected pregnancy. Give us a little background about that.
I was in college. I was not living life as I was raised to. I grew up in a Christian home, and my parents divorced whenever I was in middle school, and that affected some things growing up. And my mother remarried, but her second husband took her life the year that I graduated from high school. And so at the encouragement of friends and family, I still went off to college. And whenever I was at college, I found myself away from the people who knew me and held me accountable, and I could live as if it didn't happen. And so instead of going to church, I started going to bars. Instead of being with other believers, I was fellowshipping with people who were not believers. And I met a man who was about 10 years older than I was. He was from another country. And we began to date, and he kept on pushing marriage 3 months into a relationship, which was a little too soon for me, very soon for me. And even though I wasn't walking with the Lord, I still felt strongly that I needed to get out. I had come across a letter at his apartment from the federal, I guess, that was saying his working visa was about to expire. So I kind of put two and two together that he was trying to
stay here permanently.
Yes, stay here permanently.
Well, if I marry an American, then that solves my problem.
Yes, yeah. So that weekend, I didn't want to break up with him then because it was his birthday. We went to a barbecue for his birthday with some other people from his country. And he impressed upon me it was very important not to turn down food and drink from the people who made it for me. And so I wanted to be honoring of that. And I consumed the specialty dishes that they made, and we were having a good time. But he made sure that my wine glass was never empty. And there was hard liquor that was served to toast him and celebrate him. And he kept on making sure that I was drinking. That night, I was very sick. He still took me home, washed me off, and had his way with me. The next morning, as soon as I was composed, I drove home back to Oklahoma from Texas and ended the relationship. Then about 3 weeks later, I found out that I was pregnant.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that just for a minute, because that's, the scenario, like, oh, and suddenly now I'm pregnant. Mm-hmm. The guy is out of the picture, yeah. Right? You put him out of the picture. You went home. What was going through your mind at that very moment? Like, oh my gosh, when you got that little pregnancy test and you're looking and it says pregnant, mm-hmm. What were your feelings? And like, what did you do initially?
honestly, it was something that I wish that I could have like taken out of me for a second, just put it on a shelf so that I could look at that and be separate from it. But in that moment, God is already knitting the mother and the child together. You are already feeling the effects of the child, and it was really difficult because I always wanted kids. I always wanted to be a mom, and I knew that children belonged in a family of a mother and a father. That's how God designed it. And
Right.
even I was a child development major in high school, and I knew the studies and statistics about single moms and single parents and kids who had fathers in their lives. And I knew that my child needed a father, but I knew that marrying the man, her birth father, was not going to be
It
the
was
right.
not an option.
Yeah, it was
Right.
not an option.
So did you, like, how did you find out you were, did you go to an abortion clinic, Planned Parenthood?
Yeah, Planned Parenthood was on the corner of my Christian college campus. So, which oddly enough, I think that is not right. So I went in to get the pregnancy test because at the doctor's office, they require you to have proof of pregnancy to get in with a specialist. And I was really sick. I lost about 30 pounds my first trimester because I was so sick. And so I had to go in to get medical care. I let the birth father know that I was pregnant, and he, of course, offered marriage again. I was like, no, that's not happening. I need to take care of this. I need to go to the doctor. You can support me, financially getting this doctor appointment because I'm really sick. I need to get some medications to stop, the nausea. So he called me a liar. I was like, no. So I went to Planned Parenthood. They took me back. I took the pregnancy test and they did the sonogram, but I didn't know that that's what they were doing at the time. They didn't tell me that that's what they were doing. They didn't turn on the monitor or let me see or hear the heartbeat, but they were confirming that there was a pregnancy.
Right.
So they gave me my options, and birthing the baby was like the last one was kind of swept under the rug. And they were like, well, in your situation, your early pregnancy, this would be very easy. We could give you this cocktail of pills and this would be the procedure. And it'll be like a bad period. It'll be fine. You won't experience any.
And they were talking about the chemical abortion. That's what they were talking about.
Yeah.
Giving you RU486. You would have taken one pill there. You would have went home a couple days later, taken the second pill, and aborted your own baby at home. I mean, that's what they were, billing for you.
Yeah. And they were advocating. They were like, well, this is rape. You should just go ahead and abort the baby. That's what you should do.
Well, see, that's an important point right there. You had what was really called like a date rape.
Yeah.
You did not agree to having sex with this guy. He got you, drunk basically, and then took advantage of you. And it's so unfortunate that both Planned Parenthood, social workers in hospitals, when a woman has been raped, the first thing they're offering is abortion, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about that decision-making process. Now, here they're trying to sell you on an abortion. You would go in there thinking, okay, confirm the pregnancy, then I can go to a doctor and get nausea medication.
Yeah.
So you already made a connection to keep the baby, right? I'm going to give birth to this child, right?
Yes,
in your mind. But here they were selling abortion to you. How did you feel? How did you respond? Or did you just kind of keep quiet and say, let me get out of here? I mean, what were your feelings?
Well, honestly, it did occur to me, and I listened to them. I was like, okay, I could. This would be totally understandable in my situation.
And no one would have to know.
Yes, no one would have to know. I would continue on, but I knew that was not, that was at the core. Like Psalms 139, God has created each one of us intentionally and knitted us together in our mother's rooms. And so I knew that couldn't be an option. I did consider it, but I left then with my proof of pregnancy, and I didn't return back. Just continued.
Thanks be to God.
Yeah. Praise the Lord.
So now you went to a regular doctor and, got the care you needed. So tell us about that whole thing. Now, were you still at school or you went home?
I was at school. Yeah. I was
while you were pregnant. So where did you give birth? By the college, or you went home?
Yeah, but I stayed in Oklahoma, and I had the baby there.
So you were able to stay in school.
Yes.
You didn't have to quit school.
No.
See, that's another fallacy that they build to women, like, well, you can't be pregnant and attend school. Oh, you'll lose your scholarship. You'll be kicked out. This, that. you went through that whole next semester with no problem, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And gave
I mean,
birth.
it was difficult.
Well, of course,
But
pregnant and
yeah, but God was faithful to surround me with people who really supported me
Well, that was
and
good.
was caring for me. So I was, and thankfully, like that was around the time whenever school started doing online classes. So I was able to do most of those in comfort of my home whenever I was getting pretty large. So, and God even provided. I was working as a nanny for a live-in nanny for some families, and one family said, "We'd like for you to live with us permanently, and we'd like to take care of you." And so God really just provided everything for me.
So now you're pregnant, you're going along in your pregnancy. At what point did you start to say, "Uh-oh, am I going to take care of this baby and raise this baby, or should I make an adoption plan?" At what point did that enter into the picture?
Honestly, whenever I found out that I was pregnant, I was considering adoption.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
that was one of the things that I presented the birth father with. That was like, we can, this is an option. So he was upset about that, but he also claimed that I wasn't really pregnant, that I was faking the sickness. I was like, no. So
Was he living in the same state where you
no, he
were?
was in Texas and I was in
Okay, so
Oklahoma.
that was at least a
Yeah.
distance of leave me alone kind of thing.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, there's protection there. So I began to research Adoption Network because of the situation with him being from another country. And I believe he was trying to, have an anchor baby, so to speak. I didn't want, I wanted to get her as far away from us as possible for her protection.
Right.
And so I began to, there were local adoption agencies
Mhm.
and Christian adoption agencies, but what was most important to me was to get some space between
Get
her
her out
birth
of
father,
state.
get her out of state, and they had to be a Christian family. And there were other things that I wanted for my children. I want to homeschool my kids. I want them to have a father who is in love with the mother. And there were about 3 families that fit that criteria, and I only interviewed one, and I was going to interview the other family, but then they got an adoption placement and they were no longer an option. So I got to connect with Mary and Alan, and they shared with me. I do have some pictures here, just of this is them, this is their story. She was an ice skater, and she homeschooled, and she already had 2 kids. So I wanted my daughter to have brothers and sisters.
Like, yeah, be
Yeah,
in a
siblings.
family.
Yeah. And so they just met my criteria of being Christian. Whenever I talked on the phone with them, you could tell.
But you went through an adoption agency, right?
Yes, I went through adoption agency.
Ah, great.
So whenever I talked on the phone with them, I could tell that the father was so in love with the mother, and I knew that this.
Well,
was the
especially like
family.
you had said, your parents had divorced,
Yeah.
and you knew how traumatic that made you feel.
Yeah.
You wanted to find a couple who were, like you're saying, truly in love.
Yeah.
Divorce wasn't even like on the radar screen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, tell us about, like, you're in your 9th month, and okay, baby's going to come any moment now. These parents that you chose, did they come to the hospital? Were they part of the birth process?
Yeah, they were. We continued to get to know each other. I shared with them about enjoying the stars with my dad and enjoying going out stargazing while I was pregnant with her and taking walks and everything. And so God just kept on confirming all these things. So we decided to go ahead and pursue adoption. And I had an inducement date set at the end of the 40 weeks there. And so they were able to plan their trip down. They live far away. So they planned the trip to come down, and we were induced, and they came to the hospital. They had their own room, and they were able to hold her as soon as she was born.
Oh, how beautiful.
Yeah, so it was really beautiful.
So they made a connection right away.
Yeah.
I'm looking at these pictures. They're so beautiful. Oh, there's little footprints and all that. For confidentiality, I'm not going to turn the book around so everyone can see.
Yeah.
This is what I think is so sweet here is, your daughter, and what's the baby? You're allowed to say the baby's name?
Her name's Aubrey.
It was what?
Aubrey.
So who picked the name, you or the adoptive
mother? The adoptive mother did.
Oh, you let her select the name?
Yeah. Well, it's their child. So right. I was totally okay with that. They picked the middle name Star, And God just kept on. People would give me gifts that had stars on them. There was a willow angel that was holding a star, and they didn't know the story yet. So it was just God's confirmation throughout it. Somebody gave me a necklace with a star at that time, and so I really took it as God's confirmation that this was.
So after how many days did they, now when all the paperwork was official, leave to take this little one away from you? How many days was that? And what were those feelings like? Tell us a little.
Well, they, I believe it was 2 weeks.
So they stayed 2 full weeks?
They stayed 2 full weeks.
Wow.
I didn't get to spend that time with her. I spent 2 days in the hospital with her. And then at that point, I handed her over to them. They were, they had a room in the hospital. They would see her, and I would spend some time with her. And so, but they did stay in Oklahoma for 2 weeks as the
people are always curious about that moment.
Yeah.
So you're in one room, they're in the other room. Did you actually come into the same room together, or did someone take the baby from you and bring the baby into another room?
A little bit of both. The first page was a picture of the birth mother with my friend who made a quilt. And so the birth mom came in, the adopting mother
came in.
Came in.
You're the birth mother.
Yeah. It's hard to,
I know, it's hard.
So she came in and they held the baby, and I got to meet her kids as well.
That was nice.
So we spent some time getting to know each other there at the hospital as well. But they gave me the time that I wanted with her. And I would feed her bottles. I had her by my bedside, and I had that. They were very loving and grace-filled and understanding that I wanted that time with her. So.
But then was there a moment where then you handed her to the adoptive mother? How did that work?
I couldn't do that. At first, we did, but the final goodbye, I kissed her, and she actually left before I did. And so that was hard, but I had a peace despite the pain that this was the right decision for her.
Right.
Because we were connected, and but I knew that this was God's plan for her.
Yeah.
And I knew that this family desperately wanted another child. And so I knew this was right. So I was able to continue through it.
Yeah. And so life goes on now, you finished college and all that, but this wonderful adoptive mother, she kept touch with you, didn't she?
Yeah. The birth father did try to contest the adoption.
Oh boy.
So that was really unfortunate situation. But the judge ruled that you weren't present and supporting the mother while she was pregnant. So no. So I was really thankful that they continued on, and she sent me pictures every month for the first year, which I'm in awe because she's a homeschool mom and a newborn. She's still sending me pictures and letters. So they would, send me letters about what she was doing, what milestones she was doing, how she loved to be read books, how she loved the cat, how she loved the snow. And so I got to look at the pictures and see the joy on the family's face of having her, and the joy in the pictures from her face as a toddler. If you go a few more pictures.
Here we are.
You can
here we're growing up. Here we're growing up.
Yeah, she just has the sweetest smile.
And I see you have beautiful letters here too.
Yes, her mother was.
So you get to write a letter back to her.
I would do emails occasionally. Yeah. So
that's so sweet.
Yeah. It's.
You were very lucky that she allowed this whole relationship to continue.
Yeah.
So how old is she now?
She's 15.
Oh my goodness. She's a teenager.
Yes, she's a teenager.
So does she let you send her a letter at this point, or no?
I've sent emails and
that's
pictures.
What I meant, communication.
Yeah. So that's the extent of it right now. But that was the adoption plan that I chose for her protection. We haven't met since that day, and I hope and pray that one day soon we will be able to meet in person.
So is this considered like an open adoption when people hear that phrase?
Well, this is more of a closed adoption, semi-open, because I receive pictures and information about her via the letters, and I can send communication back to her as well.
I see. All right.
Yeah.
But it's not where you're going to actually, I guess when she gets a little bit older, when she's over 18 or 21, and she chooses to say to her mom, gee, I'd like
Mm.
to meet my birth mom, you know,
Yeah.
then that could then potentially happen, right?
Yeah, I certainly hope whenever she is ready to meet me, I would love to meet her as well and see their family. But my hope is that she has everything that she needs and doesn't fill a hole or a gap, so to speak.
Right.
But I hope so. I hope so. I've shared whenever I received pictures of her in the past and letters. I've shared them with my husband and my two
And that's
children.
right. So now
Yeah,
you went on to graduate college, and you eventually met a
yeah,
wonderful man, and you're now
yeah.
happily married, right?
Yeah.
Give us a little snapshot about that.
Yeah. Well, we've been married for 11 years, and my son Jackson turned 13, and my daughter Brenna just turned 10. And so we've been blessed to homeschool and live in Florida, and it's been great.
Right.
So my son, I would make it a habit of whenever I got the pictures, I wanted them to know about her and to pray for her. We pray for her every day, for her and her family. And so I would open the pictures and I would share the letter and read to them. And it was really hard because my son at 5 years old, he didn't understand why he couldn't see her, why he
Ah.
couldn't know her. And so, but God has just made it, I
Well,
mean, a
now they're older,
beautiful,
so they
they
can
are,
understand it.
yeah. So I know they desire to know them, to know
Yeah.
her as well. But yeah, so
So,
one of these days.
as a woman now who made that, it's, I think, is a difficult choice, but it's the
Mhm.
right choice, as opposed to,
Absolutely.
I have to deal so often with women who've had abortions and the deep
Mhm.
regret and the trauma. Because I could tell you were getting a little emotional when I said you had to then finally hand your child
Yeah.
over. Um, but I think that's different than the abortion, because the abortion, it's, you're not giving life to that child, you're destroying the life of the child, and then
Mm.
you have to deal with that guilt. And for you, in all these years, like now she's 15, you still get emotional, like you miss her. I
Yeah.
guess I would say you
Yeah.
miss your daughter. But tell us about the feelings of, but she's in a better place and I did the right thing. So how did you, like, all these years, work through those feelings?
I had some resources available to me. There's adoption, uh, crisis pregnancy outreach centers that provided support for me through counseling that I needed. Actually, part of the adoption plan while I was still pregnant with her was I had to go see a counselor as well to kind of work through these things to make sure that I was making this choice and this is what I wanted. And
Right.
so I had support and I had the tools to work through the emotions.
Right.
But I knew without a doubt that I wanted her to be in a family that was Christian and had a mother and a father. And so having that peace of mind and confirmation from the Lord that he gave me through all those little things, like I mentioned her middle name is Star, and God kept on giving me stars and little tokens, necklaces. That's just God's confirmation of knowing that that was the right choice that I made. And
Right.
that is the comfort to me whenever I do miss her, whenever I am sad. Um, I know that I can look at these pictures and see that she has every single need provided for. She gets to dance, she gets to ice skate, she's homeschooled. So there's a loving community around her. There's family pictures in here of her extended family, and her
Mhm.
mother shares about neighbors. And so
Mhm.
I know that she has a wonderful life, that she
Right.
has every need provided for, and that is what brings me comfort and
So if you
confirmation.
could say something right now to any young lady who is
Mhm.
first discovering she's pregnant, and maybe is headed over to Planned Parenthood thinking that abortion is her only solution,
Mhm.
what would you say to her right now about adoption, about making an adoption plan? What
Yeah.
sell adoption for these girls?
Well, I have spoken with a couple of girls before, and just like with you, I've sat down with the scrapbook of her mother's letters and pictures, and I've shared my story, and I've let them know that they're not alone, that they're not a bad person for letting the thought of abortion into their mind. It's just natural, right? But
Well,
it's
society
not
makes it sound like it's a giant eraser. Have this, and the
exactly.
problem will go away. But we
Yes.
know the problem. It doesn't
It
go away.
doesn't. It doesn't.
No.
Well, and I've walked along some friends who have had an abortion, and
Ah,
that has been horrific.
yeah,
It wasn't as easy as just go home and it's just going to be a bad menstrual cycle. That
right,
was not the case at all.
right.
And then the long lasting effects that they experienced afterwards, and even having trouble getting pregnant, and the emotional trauma of that.
Yeah,
And there is forgiveness in the Lord. God forgives us and heals us and brings us through. And we know that all those babies are with Jesus in heaven.
right.
So
But adoption is the better option, isn't
yes,
it?
absolutely. Life is always best. There are so many families out there, some who can't have children, some who want more children, some who for whatever reason. One of my dear friends, her husband is unable to have children, and so they've had to go a few different routes. And so there are people out there who want kids so desperately
Right.
but can't have them.
And
And
people should
so,
understand too, when a couple wants to adopt, there's a whole process. I mean,
yeah.
they come and look at their home, they look at their family
Mhm.
situation, they look at even their health. Because I know
Yes.
some people who have certain illnesses, they're not considered good adoptive parents. So there's a whole
Yeah.
process that when you're selecting this couple, they've already been screened,
Yes.
and you're getting
Yeah.
like the A-list people who are ready and able
Oh,
to take that
absolutely.
child. So
Absolutely. And there's a lot of other options. There's crisis pregnancy outreach centers that work to connect the birth mother to be a part of the family and the child growing up on a
right.
daily basis. And they help bridge the gap and provide support
Yeah.
to navigate those. So there's all kinds of adoptions. There's closed, there's open, there's,
A little bit of
integrative.
both. That's
Yeah. So
right.
there's so many options.
Well, McKayla, I want to thank you for joining me
Thank you.
today and sharing your story.
Thank you.
Well, brothers and sisters, I hope this helps you to put a more positive spin on adoption and be ambassadors of that message. But before we go, I want to remind you of a few things. First of all, here at endabortion.tv, we have a weekly pro-life news show. You can tune in every Friday night at 9 p.m. You won't see Just Ask Janet. You're going to see the Week in Review, pro-life news with Teresa Watson and Leslie Palmer. I hope you tune in for that. It's a great opportunity to catch up on the pro-life news. And also, now that abortion is being discussed, I want to remind you of a great tool to help you, my new book, Everything You Know or Need to Know About Abortion for Teens, also for adults too. Go to abortionandteens.com and place your order today. So thank you once again for joining me on our program. Until next time, this is Janet Morena, Executive Director of Priest for Life. God bless.